Hi everyone, Richard here at Calvin Wazoo, making a do-over because my previous video about this very cool live album that I found, No Nukes, has been not just flagged because of copyright violations, but it's been partially blocked, which means that in some regions, and I'm not sure what regions, you can't watch the video. It's kind of annoying because, I was playing actually it was a CD and I was playing it in the background. And so I was talking over it, but apparently there was enough times when I wasn't speaking that, it was clearly identifiable. And it was Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young. And I have another copyright claim on another video, but there's no partial takedown or anything like that. It just can't be monetized. And I'm not in this gig to make money. But it was also Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young. Or no, excuse me, it was not. It was Fleetwood Mac was playing in the background. Anyway, I don't blame the artists per se. It's the record companies. These are recordings that, were from the 60s and 70s. And that was an era when the record company, they just really control the copyright. That isn't such a problem or an issue with most musical artists today. But certainly with the recordings that were made during the 60s and 70s, when the record company pretty much owned everything and they paid the musical artist a pittance for, their records, and in some cases screwed them and didn't pay them at all, including royalties. Anyway, yeah, I don't blame Crosby, Stills, Nash. I don't blame Fleetwood Mac. It's the record company that does this, and then YouTube flags the material because they don't want to deal with the record company. So, no background music this time. And I'll attempt to recreate this video because I will delete. I'm just going to delete the other video after this one is uploaded and move on with it. So anyway, right, this is about this triple. This is a triple album live show, No Nukes. It was recorded in Madison Square Garden. It was part of the Muse concert series for a non-nuclear future. And this is from September 19 through the 23rd in 1979. Very, very cool record that I found, in the new arrivals bin at the local store. Because I typically do not go through the bins that, are compilations and, things like that. We got the Doobie Brothers, Jackson Browne, Crosby, Stills and Nash, James Taylor, Bruce Springsteen, Carly Simon, Graham Nash, Bonnie Raitt, Tom Petty, Radio, Nicolette Larson, Poco, Chaka Khan, Jesse Colin Young, Ry Cooder, John Hall, Gil Scott-Heron, Sweet Honey in the Rock. I mean, wow, what a lineup. And we've got very cool gatefold photos of all the artists. As I said, it's a triple album, and at the inner, of course, I removed the vinyl and put them in other sleeves, but these sleeves that come with it, with photos of the musicians and while they're playing, and very, very cool. Yeah, really so cool that this, it came with all this material. It's just really super nice. And then it has this booklet, on the back is each of the, again, a track listing and who are the performers on each track. And I'll go through that in a minute. But then this booklet, lots of information in here about the problems with nuclear energy. And also it talks about, solar energy, wind energy. A lot of good information in here. Articles, here's one about the Karen Silkwood case. Then also some background on, how nuclear energy came about. It was not developed as an energy source. It was developed to create plutonium for making nuclear weapons. And it just, happened that, we can also create electricity. So that was kind of a good way to make it covert, I suppose you could say. But, we've got some articles in here that we're referring to Nona LaDuke and John Trudell, two very important Native American voices in this movement. So really, really great stuff. On side one, it opens with the Doobie Brothers, Depending on You, goes into Bonnie Raitt doing a cover of Runaway, and then Bonnie Raitt again doing Angel from Montgomery. Then John Hall, Plutonium is Forever. And then side one closes with the Doobie Brothers with John Hall and James Taylor playing Power. Side two has James Taylor, Carly Simon, and Graham Nash doing a cover of The Times They Are A-Changin'. Then we have Graham Nash with Cathedral, beautiful, beautiful song. Then we have Jackson Browne and Graham Nash, The Crow on the Cradle. And then Jackson Browne closes side two with Before the Deluge. Side three opens with Nicolette Larson and the Doobie Brothers doing Lotta Love. It's a cover of a Neil Young tune. Then we have Ry Cooder doing Little Sister. Then Sweet Honey in the Rock performs A Woman. Then we have Gil Scott-Heron performing We Almost Lost Detroit. I'm going to go into that a little bit later. And then side three closes with Jesse Colin Young, Get Together. Side four opens with Radio, You Can't Change That. Then comes Chaka Khan, Once You Get Started. Then James Taylor, Captain Jim's Drunken Dream. And another James Taylor song, Honey Don't Leave L.A. And then side four closes with James Taylor and Carly Simon doing Mockingbird. Side five opens with Poco, Heart of the Night. Then comes Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers, Cry to Me. Then we have Bruce Springsteen, Jackson Browne, and the E Street Band with Rosemary Butler performing Stay. And then Springsteen and the E Street Band close side five with a medley of Devil with the Blue Dress, Good Golly Miss Molly, and Jenny Take a Ride. Side six opens with Crosby, Stills, and Nash doing You Don't Have to Cry. Then they also do Long Time Gone, followed by Teach Your Children. And then side six closes with the Doobie Brothers again with James Taylor, Taking It to the Streets. So, man, a lot of really, great artists and great music. The thing about this, that's interesting is that song by Gil Scott-Heron, and that's the song We Almost Lost Detroit. So that's a reference to the Fermi 1 nuclear accident, and that happened on October 5th, 1966. Now, this concert was in 1979. At that time of the Fermi nuclear incident, which it was a plant that was located in Frenchtown Township of Monroe County, which is just south of Detroit. It was the worst nuclear incident on record prior to 3 Mile Island. It was a breeder reactor. And, they don't have breeder reactors, anymore. That's like a big thing with the nuclear industry. But the idea with the breeder reactor was that you wanted to create more fuel. So that's what it did. It would breed more nuclear fuel because the thought at the time was the supply of uranium in the world was very, very limited. But then eventually it was realized that there was a lot more uranium out there than was first thought. Hence, the breeder reactor kind of fell by the wayside. But it led to the power industry and the nuclear lobby really lobbying that, hey, all our fail-safe systems worked. There was no threat to Detroit, because what happened is a book was written that was called We Almost Lost Detroit, that talked about how this nuclear reactor, very close to a large urban area, nearly released very high doses of radiation, out to the public. In fact, there was reference in the history that somebody from the plant called the Monroe County Sheriff's Department to report the incident, but also told the Sheriff's Department to not notify the public. And yet it took them days to really figure out what was happening, what happened, in the plant. And it turned out that there was a piece of metal that was part of the safety mechanism broke off and blocked a pipe that was transferring the coolant in and out of the reactor chamber. That blocked it, and then that's what caused the near meltdown. So there was a lot of reaction to this, including a book, We Almost Lost Detroit, and then Gil Scott-Heron wrote a song by the same title, which is performed on this. And that was performed, remember, this was 1979. Well, I did mention 3 Mile Island. So the thing is, you can talk about how safe and all the systems that are put in place to prevent a disaster, are there, but the things go wrong. Things will go wrong. And it happened again. I mean, we had 3 Mile Island in March 28th of 1979, and then this was remember, September of 79. So this was put together fairly quickly after the incident at 3 Mile Island, which was the largest, most significant nuclear plant facility disaster in the United States ever. And then in 1986, we have Chernobyl, which that location, I mean, you can go there as a tourist to visit, but, they're going to do radiation readings on you before you go. And then after you go, it's still a hot zone. Nobody lives there. Then we had Fukushima in March of 2011, which, that was a nuclear disaster, not so much because of a failure in the plant, but because of a natural disaster that occurred around the plant, the earthquake, a huge earthquake that also created a huge tsunami, and they were talking about, oh yeah, well, this facility was designed to withstand an earthquake, at this level. And the problem was that the earthquake that occurred was at this level. And while this was built, Fukushima was built next to the ocean, and they had a seawall around it, right? that was supposed to protect it from a tidal wave. We're talking about Japan that has tsunamis, all the time, and earthquakes all the time, with great frequency, I should say, not all the time. And that seawall was designed to protect the facility from a tsunami that's this high, but the one after the earthquake was this high and went over that seawall. So, and then distributed this radiation all over the place, another huge major disaster. So, yeah, there was a lot of anti-nuclear energy groups and events because the big issue, they talk about, oh, plants are so much safer now. We don't build plants like they have at Chernobyl or had at Chernobyl. We don't build breeder reactors anymore, all that kind of stuff. But they never talk about what they're going to do with the nuclear waste material, the radioactive waste. We're talking about something that remains deadly for hundreds, if not thousands of years. So you can make the plant safe all you want. You still have that waste product to deal with. They haven't solved that. So the focus, there's some irony too, because the focus in this concert with the information on solar energy and wind energy is kind of interesting because you begin to see how the energy companies, both the fossil fuel energy companies and the nuclear energy sector, are very reluctant to work toward solutions that rely more and more on wind power and solar power because, it comes down to the issue of ownership. So I'll explain some history. Back at the World's Fair in Paris in 1878, there was a pretty fantastic exhibit by a fellow named Augustin Mouchot. I think that's how you pronounce his name. He won a gold medal because he had a demonstration that took solar power, solar energy, took heat from the sun to convert into energy to make ice. The beauty of that irony of taking hot solar energy to create ice was really, really quite significant. And he won a gold medal for that exhibition. The problem was roughly in, I think it was 1850 something, oil was discovered in Pennsylvania, and that started an oil boom. And so all the attention and investment went into the development of fossil fuels. And of course, they'd been, mining for coal already, at that time, and here was a new fossil fuel. And that just keeps pointing to ownership. You can't own the sunlight. You cannot own the wind. But when it comes to uranium, I can find a plot to mine it and say, this is mine. You cannot mine here. This is my uranium. And then I can extract it and get all the money and profit from it. Same thing with oil or natural gas or any other fossil fuel. Hey, here it is. I have the rights to this. You cannot take any of this oil from this spot. It is mine to extract and make money from. But, you can't say, hey, you're taking my sun. That's my sunlight you're converting into energy for your own purpose. I can't make money off of that. And the same thing with wind. All right? You can't say, this is my wind. And to me, that's why you have conglomerates, energy companies, fighting against the further development of solar and wind energy. And you go back to that that demonstration by Mouchot in 1878, he had the technology then to take sunlight and turn and make ice. And that's one of the things that you're going to hear is, well, the technology is going to take so long to develop. Well, bullshit, because in 1878, the technology existed. Had there been investment in the development and further refinement of that technology, where do you think we would be today then in terms of our ability to generate solar power and wind power if we hadn't been diverted by the dollar signs everybody was seeing with the liquid gold of petroleum? And we look at that sector of the energy company, and right now there is a company called Enbridge. All right, so Enbridge, you may or may not know about this, but there was a pipeline of Enbridge's that broke and oil spilled nearly 1 million gallons of tar sands crude spilled into a tributary of the Kalamazoo River in Michigan. This happened in July of 2010. It was, and I think it remains, the largest overland spill in U.S. history. And then in 2013, there was another smaller, but another overland spill called the Mayflower spill. That occurred in Arkansas. Well, right now, Enbridge has a pipeline that goes through the Straits of Mackinac, which is that part of the Great Lakes that connects Lake Michigan with Lake Huron, the narrow straits. There's the Mackinac Bridge that connects the lower peninsula with the upper peninsula of Michigan. So yeah, on the bottom of the straits is this pipeline that is carrying crude oil. And there's been lots of discussion, in Michigan about it, because the bottom line remains, it's systems like this will fail. Okay, you can say all you want that there's never going to be a leak, but I'm sorry, it happens. Oil tankers crash and spill oil, and pipelines break and spill oil. It's going to happen. It's not a matter of if, but when. And then when we're talking about this Enbridge pipeline in the Great Lakes, we're talking about a water source, a drinking water source for 40 million people, both in the US and in Canada. Not to mention the ecosystems. We go back in history to the times, when pollution was so bad that a river that feeds into Lake Erie in Ohio, the Cuyahoga River, caught fire twice because it was so polluted. This concert was in 1979. In 1970, the U.S. created the EPA, which worked diligently to reverse some of this, so that now Lake Erie, which was considered dead because of the pollution, not just from the Cuyahoga River that was going into it, is now a live lake, so to speak. It's not dead anymore. The air, in New York City was so bad, it was the equivalent of smoking 3 packs of cigarettes a day. That's not the case anymore because of the EPA and the controls on air pollution and the controls on water pollution. And these have been eroded. And so there was a lot of energy in the 70s in particular by popular musicians and rock groups into promoting a greener life. And so that's why this find is historically significant and not just musically significant. Really, really important things to keep in mind. And it has great information for educating you about all these things. Because it's happening again. As I said, all these regulations that were created to improve our environment are being chipped away. And that erosion of the regulations is being promoted by capitalists, big money capitalists, because it costs them money. The funny thing is that these companies have been so profitable over the past decades, since 1970, and yet we have cleaner air and cleaner water, all right? But they're still saying that it costs them too much money, which means instead of making $100 billion, they can only make $10 billion. While the rest of us are never, ever, 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 ever even going to come close. Even if you win the lottery, you're not going to come close to the wealth of these corporations. So it's very self-serving, and it was really important during these times when bands, got together and had these types of events. Whether it was Farm Aid that was organized for helping out farmers, or this whole project here to promote solar and wind power over nuclear energy in particular, but fossil fuel energy as well. And the fight remains, although there's growth now in solar and wind energy sectors, but it's very localized because no one's going to get necessarily rich off that energy. They could get rich making the components, like the solar energy panels, the companies that manufacture the windmills. They can make money creating the products, but the actual harvesting of the energy, you're not going to make money off of that, because I could build a home and I could put solar panels on it myself, and then I basically only connect myself to the grid for emergency situations. The petroleum companies, the nuclear energy sector doesn't like that. They don't like the fact that they can't own the sunlight. They cannot own the wind. So it excites me because, this was a time when popular music was constantly informing us of these things and promoting a more egalitarian system so that everybody had an equal share of things that we should be sharing equally. I'm not saying that we need to eliminate capitalism altogether, and most people who were performing and musical artists, etc., were not saying that either. So, but now, and I'm not saying that there are no musicians who are not environmentally conscious and do not make that part of their art. There are, but it just doesn't seem to be such an important core value anymore. So we seem to be allowing people to be elected who are both Republican and Democrat, who are willing to take money from corporations, and by doing so agree tacitly or implicitly to crafting legislation that benefits their donors rather than us. So I'm really happy that I found this. Again, it was in the new arrival bin because I do not go, as a rule, to the compilation section, the various artists, collection section of the record store, Same thing with soundtracks. Sometimes I'll go into the soundtrack section, because I'm looking for a particular soundtrack. And for example, Woodstock, that album is considered a soundtrack because of the movie Woodstock. That's where you'll find it typically. But anyway, I don't generally look in those sections. So to find this was pretty sweet, and it wasn't badly priced either. Now that I think about it, I can't remember how much I paid for it, but it certainly wasn't very much. Very cool album. And I'm sure you can find some of the songs, if not the entire album, on YouTube and listen to it. Although, because Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young are on it, good chance, that it'll get taken down because whatever record company, owns their catalog, they're the ones I believe who are responsible, for example, on the partial block that was put on my video. So anyway, it's a long video, but I really, really wanted to share the background and the history in the nuclear energy sector and its connection, especially with nuclear weapons. You look at all the other countries in the world who have joined the nuclear club. It began with them building a nuclear energy plant. And then from there, they were able to create nuclear weapons, because that was the original reason these plants were created. Not to create power, but to create, as in electric power, but to create plutonium so that they can make a bomb. Yeah, no nukes. I don't care how safe the technology is for the operation of a plant. You still don't have a solution for the waste products. Waste products that are deadly for hundreds, if not thousands of years. Well, so I veered off a little bit politically with this particular video. Nonetheless, I hope you liked it, and I do hope you check this out. Live recordings are a lot of fun. Please leave a comment in the down under. Certainly share this video, please, and subscribe if you haven't already. But the most important thing is to remember to always enjoy your music.